Welcome to The Experience with Bryce Boudreaux. Only the biggest and best names in professional wrestling interviewed right here on The Experience. Follow The Experience on Facebook at The Experience with Bryce Boudreaux, on Instagram at The Experience Live. Like, subscribe, and follow on this app.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my guest at this time, you know him. He's one of the top names on the Texas independent scene, and he's also one of the most highly respected people in the business. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest, SuperTex Brent McKenzie. Brent, what's going on, man?
What's happening, Bryce? Thanks for having me on.
Man, no problem. I've actually been
an introduction there.
You think so?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean,
was it lackluster?
No. It's just, I don't know. It's still weird when people go, "Oh, one of the best on the independent scene in Texas," or whatever. You know, it's still weird that people say that. I don't know.
You don't think that you're one of the best?
No, it's not that I don't think I'm. I mean, there's no real easy way to answer that. You know, to go not to sound like an ass. You know, yeah, I'm one of the best, but it's still weird to hear someone say it. I guess I don't know. I mean, I've been doing this long enough, I suppose. But thanks for the introduction. That was
Absolutely. Great. Yeah, man. Like I've been wanting to do this for a while with you because, like, whenever I first started the show, maybe was that early 2018 I started this. No, it was like late 2018 I started the show, and I think it was like September. And you were like one of the first people I reached out to. We just could never really get together and do it. I just had so much going on.
That's my fault, probably, just because I'm the worst about getting back to people, especially for like podcast interviews or something like that. I've had several people here locally. They're like, "Hey, we want to get you on and do this this YouTube show we've got, or this podcast." And I'm just like, "Yeah, we'll do it." And then I forget, or just schedule changes, and I'm just because I'm the worst. But yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's probably not you. It's probably me. I was so busy, and now we're bringing the show back, and you're one of the first guests for the new season. So it's pretty awesome. Nice. But hell yeah. So with the goings on of right now across the country with coronavirus and all that crap, ignore all that. But I wanted to ask you, so recently you've been with SWE, Southwest Wrestling Entertainment, which is taking Texas by storm, taking the South by storm, because now they're on every television market in the country almost.
So they just announced yesterday that we'll be on the local CW channel in DFW, which is huge for us because that will help for our live events, the tapings itself. So, you know, more eyes on the product locally. That means more people in the stands locally. So I'm really excited about it. So we're started out on a channel called Right Now TV. They're in a bunch of local markets around the country. Unfortunately, there's nothing here in Texas for Right Now TV. But they do have a live stream that plays on their Roku app, so you can watch it through Roku. They also do the live stream on their website, which is pretty cool. So you can watch it. And then they announced that the next network to pick them up was the Action Channel, and I think the locally, or at least statewide, there's an affiliate in San Antonio, so you could watch it there. But there's even more even more stations for the Action Channel. And then they got on Fight TV. So Fight, is worldwide, obviously. So that's really cool. And they're playing the episodes, I believe, Thursday nights on Fight at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Central Time. And now they just announced yesterday, of course, the CW33 in DFW. So that's really cool, which reaches like 2.5 million homes, I believe.
Good God.
So, yeah, so it's really cool. Really something special there. And, I'm at the forefront of the show at this point. So Really enjoying my time there. It's a really good company, and they take care of everybody, and it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun when we're doing the tapings. We just did a house show this past Saturday in Canton, and had a pretty good turnout and really good show. A lot of really good talent on the show. So that's really what sets, I think, SWE apart, is they've got some really, really talented people who have a lot of time in the business, and then there's a lot of the young guys that are just, getting their feet wet and are really talented as well. So it's a good mix of both the veteran talent and then the younger guys coming in, and everything works really well together.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So, I'm sure you remember, the first, I think it was, I don't want to say it was the first, but it was the first major SWE show. I was invited to go up there and do the ring announcing along with Mitchell Roy, and I had a blast. That was very impressive. I take things with a grain of salt, and whenever I walked in there, I'm like, holy hell, this is a big deal.
Yeah, they take everything really seriously. So a lot of the smaller things that some companies don't really take into consideration when they're putting on a show, SWE does, and that's because they've got a really good office, and a lot of guys that have been doing it for a long time, and they know to look for that smaller stuff, of course. So really well-rounded promotion, and guys like Tom Lance who've been doing this stuff have been promoting for 30 years. So he knows it like the back of his hand. And I was just talking to him a couple nights back and thanking him for the weekend and all that kind of stuff. And he had posted something about Superstars of Wrestling that he was partners with Chris Adams, or actually it was Akbar. He was partners with Skandar Akbar. And I asked him, I said, hey, did you have a part of Superstars of Wrestling? And it was March of 2001, because that was the very first independent wrestling show I ever went to. And it was in Temple, Texas, at the Mayburn Center. And he says, yeah, that was me. And I said, very first show I ever went to was the one you were promoting, Tom. He said, man, what a small world. And I go, yeah. And so it's pretty cool, kind of coming full circle with that kind of stuff. So, because that was the first show I ever went to, and that was what really made me want to be a professional wrestler, aside from just being a fan and watching it on TV. But that was the first live experience I ever had, and that really kind of solidified my want to be a professional wrestler. And it took a few years to finally make it happen, but told him that was pretty cool. And he said, man, we ought to try to tell that story at some point. And I said, yeah, man, we really ought to. So look forward to maybe telling that a little later down the road on the TV show or something. So
yeah, hopefully that'll be awesome. It's funny how things come full circle. It really is. So you mentioned how you wanted to get trained, and that was the first time you had seen wrestling. That was your first live show, and then you later on got trained. How old were you whenever you first got trained?
When I first started training, I was 24. They're 20. So the story is that I had a friend of mine that knew one of the wrestlers, and it was an upstart promotion in Central Texas, and they really hadn't done anything yet. And but a buddy of mine who I worked with at the time, and I'd known him for years and years. I grew up with him, but we were working at the same place. We both worked at the prison for TDCJ, Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
Were you a warden or a?
No, yeah, I was
a guard.
Yeah, I was a correctional officer.
What?
Yeah.
Unreal.
So I started there when I was 21. So I did that for 3.5, almost 4 years. Damn. Got sick of it, but wrestling was a pretty big reason I quit the prison system. So aside from a whole lot of other things that I'm not going to get into, but he knew one of the guys that was wrestling. It was a guy named Ray Trevino. Did a mask gimmick, was real similar to Rey Mysterio, which was and that's kind of how it was. It was real markish. We were just a bunch of guys that were just trying to get into it, and we were all still real fans, so we really didn't know, shit from shit, honestly. And so he told me about it, and then he gave me his buddy's number. He gave me Ray's number, and I called him and said, "Hey, we're going to do some training out here on this day." I think it was the 14th of February. It was 2008, so it was Valentine's Day, and it was in Lampasas. I lived in Temple. That's about a 50-mile drive. Lampasas is just on the west side of Killeen and Fort Worth, that area. So I decided to go ahead and head on out there. I'd originally made plans with this girl that I was seeing. I had tickets to this concert, and we were trying to kind of really on the rocky end of the relationship, and I was just trying to kind of make things right or whatever. I didn't do anything wrong looking back, but I just wanted to make the relationship work. So I was like, "Hey, I've got these tickets for Valentine's Day. Let's go do this. It's gonna be really cool." And she had made plans with somebody else that day, so took that as a hint and decided to drive my happy ass out there to Lampasas. And it turns out that the ring they've got set up, it was an old homemade ring. It was pretty shoddy, but it was in the middle of this horse farm. So there's this big barn, and then in the corral basically is the damn ring. And so it's all exposed to the weather and everything. I come out there and I meet this guy. His name's Rick Steele. Oh man, first introduction to how shitty the wrestling business can be, and just how there's a lot of carny individuals. Rick was something else. He had claimed that he was the Patriot, right? So he was claiming to be Del Wilkes, basically. So he says, "Yeah, I'm Patriot." Blah blah blah. And I'm looking at this middle-aged guy with a beer gut, going, "That's not the Patriot, right?" Because I know what the Patriot looks like. I've watched wrestling. So, but he's like, "Well," he tells me the price and all that kind of stuff. "We'll let you make payments and stuff, and go ahead and get in the ring. Go check it out." So I got in the ring, and I had took a bump for the first time in that ring. And it sucked because the ring was so hard. It was stiff. But for a bigger guy, I was even larger at the time, because working at the prison didn't really allow for you to be really active, especially if you were in a post where you couldn't do a whole lot of moving around. So you sit there all night. And so I gained weight. I was probably close to 450 pounds at the time. So I go out there and take the bump, and then the guy's like, "Oh man, you can move pretty good for a big man." I'm like, "Yeah, I've always been fairly athletic, So they were running a show about a week later, and it happened that Ryan Genesis was one of the guys that was training out there. And Ryan Genesis obviously went on to form Kings of the Underground with Scott Summers, and they became NWA World Tag Team Champions, all of that. So this is where I first met Ryan. And Ryan had been in the area maybe for probably 8 or 9 months, maybe a year. He had moved down from the Tacoma, Washington area, or Olympia, Washington area, and was living in Temple as well. So Ryan was really kind of putting the show on, and he got the venue booked for Rick and all of that. So his wife at the time had worked at a place called The Ranch, I believe. Yeah, it's called The Ranch, and it was kind of in between Temple and Belton, and that's where they did one of their first shows. And so they had me work security. So this was really my third time ever watching wrestling live, right? Looking back, it was a shit show. It really was. It was a bunch of folks that didn't really know what they were doing, and just garbage, Ryan ended up gigging so hard that they had to take him to the emergency room. He ended up getting like 13 stitches across his head, and then split himself open really good. And I saw when it took place. He took a post, right, and rather than doing the old stick and turn, he stuck and pulled and just sliced his top of his head open really bad. And every time his heart was beating, blood was shooting out. So,